Hashtag Blood puts you in the role of a high schooler attempting to stop a vampire apocalypse while evoking the nostalgic feel of late 90s US cartoons. Great animation is matched with competent gameplay and a fun story to deliver a dozen or so hours of thrills and chills. Some missteps along the way can hamper your enjoyment a bit though, so let's get into all of it in the Xbox era review of Hashtag Blood. Hashtag Blood's biggest strength is its dedication to looking and feeling like a mid to late 90s Cartoon Network cartoon stylistically. While there is no voice acting, there's a real fun mix of hand-drawn cutscenes and cute gameplay art that evokes a nostalgic feeling in even my broken heart. You play as Becky Brewster, a newcomer to the town of Carpentersville. Becky, it turns out, is the last of a long bloodline of vampire hunters on her late mother's side. As she begins to adjust to life at her new school, the town is besieged by a dark curse, and she'll use her trusty field hockey stick to smash apart every creature of the night that she comes across. The game uses a smartphone as its UI hub. You'll use an in-game version of Instagram-y, Facebook-y Twitter to track quests, and it works well once you're used to it. Primarily playing on Xbox, the UI always had a little bit of lag to it, where I'd have to wait a second or two to get into things when first opening it up. One fun feature though in the game is pressing right bumper to take selfies. While you can do this in various areas around town to get specific interactions, you will want to try and sneak them in while fighting various creatures. Getting a selfie off with them fills out their compendium entry and gives you a bit of extra lore. The story has a fair number of twists and turns, and it wasn't overly predictable. There's a gruff janitor who teaches you, a nerdy friend who makes you gadgets, and numerous other side characters that all have fun roles to play. Hashtag Blood is a dungeon crawler played from a nearly top view perspective. The gameplay consists of swinging your stick, dodging, and using a handful of unlocked items to counter particular situations and enemies. The game was a little bit of a pain to fight until you got that umbrella, which allows you to block. It's a really big thing, and also early on you'll just be using your fists to pummel rats and bugs, so getting the field hockey stick as soon as possible does make the combat feel better, but it will cost you in that you miss a bunch of story beats. My main issue with the game's combat is how you gain 0 invincibility frames when you use the dodge roll. Touching an enemy will remove part of your health, which is shown in Zelda-style hearts. Becky has a particularly brutal attack if you dodge into it, but I gave up using that because that dodge covers so much distance that I found myself just hitting enemies with my face and losing health way too often. The combat in the game is never really bad, but it's also never really good. It's kinda just thoroughly mediocre, but you have to do it a lot, and that wouldn't be so rough if the puzzles were more enjoyable, but quite often they do really end up being fetch questy with a lot of busy work as you traverse to one area to try and find a particular thing, and then you gotta work your way all the way back to where you started. This can be helped with the game's fast travel system, though unlocking that is a little bit of a grind itself. There's a sewer system, and you need to clear each tunnel for each destination before it can be used. That doesn't mean you can then just use it anywhere though. You still have to get into the sewer entrance first, and those are pretty spread out around town and not quick to access. There is a linear upgrade path that encourages you to do side quests and explore whenever they pop up. I missed a few as I focused on the main quest early, and I never saw a way to actually go back and do them later on, so you want to make sure you get everything done if you think it's worth it. They just disappeared from my quest log, just lost to the ether. You'll get a couple of ranged abilities, the first being pencils you can throw, and the second are cherry bombs you can toss. Those bombs are super powerful and the only way to kill a couple of enemies. Thankfully, the game makes sure you've got an unlimited dispenser around for them whenever those enemies popped up, so it wasn't a problem. Hashtag Blood is carried by its art style. There are a lot of hand-drawn cutscenes that feature that style that harkens back to the Cartoon Network of Cartoon Network days, with Becky and the Townsfolk having that exaggerated, shrunken proportion look that immediately made me think of a show like Dexter's Laboratory. Conversations in the game feature a mix of characters flapping their mouths as mumbles match the tone. You've got angry ma-ma-ma-ma-mas and happy ha-ha-ha-has as you'll get pretty much nothing else for voice acting. The music, though, is a constant bop that helped keep me engaged throughout, even when the game's combat and puzzles were driving me a little bit batty. It's never goofy, which is key to a game like this that's trying to be funny. Like, it's a mix. It's a vampire apocalypse, but it's also a bunch of little high school kids doing funny shit. And Hashtag Blood pulls off that humor well, with a mix of jokes and a little bit of seriousness that belies that cartoony exterior. The writing's really damned good, and alongside the art was what kept my interest throughout my playthrough. I didn't also run into any major bugs, though a few key gameplay systems weren't actually explained at first, and I had to kinda stumble into the answer. I thought my game had soft-locked me out, but it turned out there was a find pink skull and put it on pedestal system early on that showed up out of nowhere, and if there was an explanation, I just flat out missed it. Once I realized I could pick them up, it was easy peasy, but I felt lost for like 35 minutes to an hour before I did. Wrapping things up, #Blood is a damned funny title with a great art style. While the combat and puzzles could leave me feeling a bit burnt out at times, it's still an easy recommendation for anyone looking for a beautiful, funny dungeon crawler.